This is the recently rediscovered short story Gibbet Hill by Bram Stoker, as published in the Daily Express on December 17th, 1890. Gibbet Hill by Bram Stoker. When I left the Royal Huts Inn on the top of Hind Head in order to visit the Devil's Punch Bowl and Gibbet Hill, immortalized by Turner in the Liber Studiorum, I passed along a wide straight road, the new high road between London and Portsmouth, and shortly came to the edge of the Punch Bowl, and feasted my eyes on its beauty. The fog, which had been heavy in London when I left on this mid-October morning, extended even to Haslemere, and hung in the valleys so that the tops of the Surrey hills rose like islands from the sea of mist. And in the brilliant sunshine which glorified these upper levels, softened and mellowed with all the wide expanse of hill and dale, and down which ranged between me and the southern coast. The hill gave steeply on all sides, save the northwest, where the circular valley opened to the plain below. All the summer tints were chastened and mellowed, all the full colors which the sunshine had glorified had faded into the sere of autumn. The pink and purple of the heather were changed to a brown, with only a suggestion of faded color to warm its tone. The bracken was of rich amber and faded yellow, and the myriads of grasses and wildflowers had donned their winter garb, the hues of decay. Through all this rich mass of autumn tints, the broom, untouched as yet by the frost, sent an emerald flash. The green bushes, which fringed the tiny stream running through the valley, seemed of a supernatural vividness, and the dark green of the pines, which covered the western slope and ran down into the valley, seemed to assert in some positive way the right of nature to maintain her own color despite all influences. Away to the north and west, past the spurs and shoulders of the hill, the woods and valleys, the copses and villages, and hills and ridges ranged in endless succession. And it was after a long, long pause that I turned from drinking in the beauty of the scene, with my heart full of the power and majesty and purifying influence of nature's beauty. Here at least, said I to myself, the soul of man is elevated, and on this higher plane of nature's handiwork, the evil of our hearts is lulled. As I turned, however, I started, for as if by the irony of fate, there beside me was a grim memorial of man's wickedness and lust for blood. A tombstone by the roadside, marking the spot where a century ago a poor seaman, trudging on his way from Portsmouth, was murdered. But not the stone only was of interest, for by it were three figures which would have arrested attention anywhere. They were only children, but of types that were not common. Two were young Indian girls of an age which, by the slower development of English girlhood, would be about some 13 or 14 years. Being, however, of Eastern birth, they were probably much younger. They stood one on each side of the memorial stone, looking almost like heraldic supporters, as each with a slim brown hand resting on an elbow of the stone leaned her face on the hand while looking at me gravely with long, dark, fathomless eyes. They were both very pretty of their type, and their slim, girlish figures were draped in black of some shimmering material, made in a half-Eastern fashion with a wide belt of the stuff round the waist, and some kind of dark material wound around the head and acting as a headgear. The third of the group was a little boy of some 10 years old, with hair of spun gold, eyes like blue porcelain, and a winning smile on his rosy face. One might designate him indifferently a Cupid or an angel. He was dressed in a dark, blood-colored tunic. For a few seconds I stood looking at this group, they regarding me steadfastly, without the slightest movement. Then I spoke to them, making some remark about the beauty of the scene. One of the girls said, tapping the stone with her hand as she spoke, "Can you tell us anything about this stone, sir? We are strangers." "I am a stranger here myself, but I think we will find it here," I answered as I proceeded to read the inscription, which is on both sides of the stone. When I read of the word murder, they all three looked at each other, and then at me, and shuddered, and strange to say, followed the shudder with a smile. I thought they might be frightened, and I hastened to add, "But you need not let this disturb you. It all happened 100 years ago, when the country was very different from what it is now." One of the girls said in a low voice, whose tones were peculiarly penetrating, "I hope not. I trust not." And the little boy looked up at me with a laugh and said, "I suppose if there were a murder now, someone would be stuck up on Gibbet Hill." "Hello, young man," said I. "You know all about it, I see. I'm going up to the hilltop to see the memorial cross. Will you come and see where they put the murderer?" "With pleasure," he said, with an air of almost supernatural gravity, lifting his cap in acknowledgement of my invitation. The girls bowed too, and we all moved up the hill together. As we went, I noticed that the boy had one of his hands tightly clenched. "What have you got there?" I asked of him. "These," he said, opening his hand and showing me a crumpled mass of great earthworms, wriggling in their sudden freedom. "I love worms," he went on. "See, they wriggle so, and you can pull them out long," and he illustrated the latter fact. "Poor worms," said I. "Why not let them go? They would much rather be on the ground." "Shan't," was his only reply, as he shoved them into the folds of his tunic.